beautiful 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yo, welcome in, golf fans. My name is Joe Idoni. At Tour Picks is the spot to find me on X, and you have stumbled your way into the most ridiculous, potentially life-changing in terms of the amount of money you will lose if you tail my picks podcast on the entire internet. This is Preferred Lines. We are the Golf Gambling Club. I'm going to talk later about my perpetuity or whatever the word is to completely end up picking the guy who finishes in second place every single week. But we're going to touch on what happened last week from the John Deere. We'll talk a little bit of breaking news in the Ryder Cup world tonight. And that happened earlier today. And then we'll also dive into the course specifics, details, picks for the Scottish Open. Thank you. You guys are the absolute best for joining me on this show each and every week. I had a week off. I'm refreshed. I'm re-energized. I'm ready to finish out the season strong. Thank you, Ted, for always being here. My boy might pick Wyndham. More on that later, JDP. And Joe, welcome into the show. Happy to see you, my friend. You guys are the absolute best. This show is brought to you, would not be coming to you if it weren't for the good people over at Rotoballer. The promo code, if you would like to join the gang, that includes me, Spencer, Model Maniac, Joe Nicely, a ton more great content producers, including live golf content. We are putting out like 20 different articles each and every week specific to the PGA Tour, specific to live. Anything that you need for betting on golf, playing fantasy, matchup, Discord access, camaraderie. We have got it there for you, and they have been a huge supporter of this show. So make sure to go check out Rotoballer PGA Team. Give them a follow. Go over to their YouTube page as well. Subscribe to that YouTube channel. I'm putting out my long shots each and every week. It's quick. It's like a 6 to 8 minute video. I give a ton of information. I provide 3 or 4 bombs each and every week. Hope that you guys will check that out. Thank you to the team over at Rotoballer. You guys are the absolute best. Now, without further ado, I'm so excited to get to talk with a friend about golf again after a week off. The crazy 1-week vacation has turned right around into a big-time event this week. There's no one I'd rather talk to and catch up on the world with than my boy, PGA tout, John Haselbauer from the Lines. What's up, John? How are you this evening?
Joe, it's good to be back. I'm feeling fired up with that intro. I feel like I took an unofficial break from social media where I've just like tweeted less for the last month and just I moved into a new house. I've had some life changes over here. All is good. But I also feel like Scottish Open is like, I'm back. Like I missed this. I miss chopping it up, talking about golf, not just writing about it. And you know, talking up with one of the best in the industry, Joe Idoni. What could be better?
That's awesome, man. I'm so pumped to have you. The studio behind you is coming together great. You are one of the best to do it with the course previews each and every week. I'm excited to learn more about what you have on the Renaissance Club here shortly. But let's talk briefly about what did transpire at the John Deere. Davis Thompson kind of runs away and hides, but Thorne Bjornsson up there, Clanton, Shipley, this young crop of players seems to me more prepared and ready than ever to immediately step in and compete on the PGA Tour level with the best in the game. And we shouldn't necessarily be afraid to bet them. How much does experience matter, and how much have you seen the evolution of these players, whether it be via practice access or equipment or whatever it is that has them immediately ready to step foot on the PGA Tour and try to win?
Yeah, I mean, with speed training, you know, and the forgiveness of the modern technology, if you swing it fast and you hit it far and you go to these last 2 weeks of Detroit Golf Club, TPC Deere Run, and there's little resistance there and there's not much of a penalty for missing the fairway, and it's just who can hit it the farthest and hit wedges the closest. There is a very shrinking gap between junior golf and professional golf, let alone the fact that how diluted the talent on the PGA Tour has gotten with everything with live and all that. It's just become so much easier for these new super talented studs to come right up and contend. And it's not just golf. I mean, you look at Look at what Cooper Flagg was doing in the Olympics basketball highlights. Like all of these young kids have so much access to training and the nicest facilities and stuff that the gap between junior golf and professional golf, or just really junior athletics and professional athletics, is narrowing, and it's really exciting to see.
Can we talk about the pronunciation of this club? Is it Renaissance Club? Is that how it's
Renaissance?
Okay. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right, my boy Kip in it real. If you guys want to check out if you're into CrossFit or whatever kind of weird workout shit that he does, check out his program as well. What's up, Grant? All right, so question number 2. Second place, John. I've got a big problem this season, and it's picking the guy that finishes in second and betting him each and every week. 4 consecutive weeks, I have placed money on an outright wager on the player that has finished second in the golf tournament. That makes 7 of the last 8 weeks where my guy has finished second. I have 0 winners over that span. I don't understand. It feels like a coin flip nearly every time. I'm rattled by it. I don't know whether I should be changing strategy or whether I should maybe be like encouraged that the strategy is sound. I'm getting to the last furlong of the horse race, and I just need my guy to cross the finish line. How has your season been, and do you have any advice to pick me off the map and finish the season strong?
I don't have advice to pick you up the map, but I can commiserate with you because you picked the perfect person to talk about near finishes without picking up a winner over the last 2 months. Plus, I won't say how long it's been since my last outright because it's not pretty. But I try to like cope with it by saying that I'm not a professional bettor. I do this for entertainment value and to make the golf a little bit more interesting and for me to have a little vested interest in what's going on. And that's great about having a guy in the mix because you always have a reason to be tuning in. Even last week, I have Ben Griffin, he finished third, or, whatever, a stroke behind the guys who finished runner up. But it was like, I don't have a shot, but if something crazy happened here, he could backdoor it. So I will watch the back nine. So it's been good entertainment value. It doesn't really pay the bills at all, but it still works for DFS. If you're like playing your guys who aren't winning but are contending, you can still be profitable. I do more than just outright betting. So I've got placements in first round leaders and stuff and props like that I can still break even on when the outrights aren't paying off. But obviously very frustrating. You could bet top fives with them. I'm not going to do that. It's not fun. Like I'm with you. Like I want to hang a banner. I want to throw it up on the header when somebody wins. I don't want to collect a fifth of the odds because the guy finished top 5. There's no fun in that.
Yeah, I always try to sprinkle. I've been playing a little bit of top 20s, and I like to take the same guys in matchups. And like you mentioned, DraftKings as well is a good place to get some exposure because I feel like I'm picking like my strategy and the reasons that I'm picking players is ultimately like proving true. So I feel like this season I've put in more effort than any other season in terms of really dialing into the stats, making sure my information is not only accurate, but makes sense in terms of a course fit for those individual guys. Just hasn't worked out. And like I try to talk and preach about staying focused on the process over results, but it's kind of the nature of what we're doing is we're hoping for some results along the way, hoping for a big second half of the season. Happy that I'm not the only one that continues to pick guys finishing second. Let me ask you, when the markets open on Monday, right? I'm typically on my, I do my thing with the kids in the morning, get them ready for the day. I'm headed into the office. I'm trying to look through some odds board. Are you one of those guys that sort of will make your own odds or is ready to fire Monday morning when they are initially released? Or do you like to let the market sort of iron out and, things sink in throughout the week and make more of your plays toward later on Wednesday, even if that means you may miss the best price on a player?
Yeah, I've my routine has changed a lot over the last 4 weeks because I moved. So I used to bet everything on Bet365 and wait for the enhanced odds to come out. Now I'm getting used to a whole new batch of sports books and when they put their odds out and all that. I also I used to work from home on Mondays, so I could do this all from my bed, and then my job schedule changed. So now I'm taking a train in on Monday. which works because I could be on the train and look at the odds board. So I think this is actually the first week where I got back into what I like to do with sports betting, with golf betting, which is have a clear idea after I finish writing my tournament preview of like the 4 or 5 guys that I'm zeroing in on and the odds that I think they should be, and ready to pounce on any like obvious misprices on Monday morning. And then you might have a situation like last week come up, which happens, I would say, probably twice a year, where the favorite withdraws and then there's value everywhere. So if you're somebody who's ready to bet on Monday, you open yourself up to that inherent value. Whereas if you're somebody who takes their time and you're not ready to put it in first thing in the morning, you get distracted on Monday, then you get something like what happened to me with John Deere last week, where I wasn't ready to capitalize on Patrick Cantlay withdrawing, and then you take a little bit worse odds and there's less guys you can fit on a betting card.
Yeah, this is kind of one of the weird weeks because there is advantage toward early betting if you can catch a guy to withdraw, particularly when there's like 1 or 2 very strong, like head and over heels better than the rest of the players in the field, kind of like Patrick Cantlay was last week. And it's also a questionable tournament spot on the schedule where like maybe this guy, like this is a spot that makes sense for him to withdraw. He committed 3 weeks ago before he had any idea that he was going to like actually compete at the US Open. So that kind of makes sense. But I'm brought back to like weeks like this. And when you look at links golf and when you look at the Open and when you look at the Scottish Open, tournaments that are so vulnerable to weather and quick weather changes. The Scottish Open, for instance, this week can play anywhere from like -5 to -25. And we've seen that over the years, and it's 100% dependent upon weather. And even last year, like those 35, 40 mile an hour winds that came in on Sunday, we really didn't see coming early in the week. It kind of shocked people and popped up on the weekend. How much does like the weather and trying to look at a forecast change the way you may handicap an event or what stats you are pulling? Like, are you pulling more data from a certain category if you think it's going to be really low scoring and windy versus really benign and players are just going to go out there and hunt for birdies?
Yeah, I mean, that's like everything you just said is why I don't do futures for the Open. I'll do futures for every other major, but for the Open, you could get such an advantage with the weather and the splits and everything. So I really try to stay disciplined on that and not bet anything until ideally tournament week, so you can at least get a preview of how guys played in links and weather like this recently in Scotland. And then, if you have the patience, you save a little bit for one last guy in like the 20-1 range to just put that in when you see the weather draw, and hopefully he gets a good split. I thought it was interesting. Cam Young was the first round leader at St. Andrews 2 years ago. Yep. And he was miscut, looked horrific the week before. And he was like, I've never played golf in Europe before. I've never like flown overseas and adjusted to the time difference and then played at an elite professional level before. So it took my body like a full week to adjust. And I think there's a lot to that this week with the Scottish Open, where like I'm putting a lot more emphasis on past reps here. Have you made this trip before? Even if you're like, even what we were going back to saying before, where the gap between junior golf and professional golf is narrowing, this is the type of conditions that expose you, because you can't just TrackMan it around here. You need that experience to be able to say, I'm somebody who's flighted my ball down in super chaotic, windy conditions. Like, you're only going to get that this week and next week. And then, that's really it on the PGA Tour. Pinehurst was interesting to sort of give you that feel, and Pebble Beach, if it ever, like, we just have gotten pretty nice weather at Pebble Beach recently. So you don't really get that in those coastal conditions. So anyway, long story short, like, it's such a unique beast this week. The weather does impact it. But I think the ends justify the means. If you've played well in links conditions in the past, that's kind of how I whittle down my player pool this week.
Yeah, it's so unique because a lot of the data that we're pulling is from the last 24, last 36 rounds, and you're looking at you're looking at Cromwell, you're looking at Detroit Golf Club, you're looking at TPC Deer Run, you're looking at these places that are primarily attacked aerially, right? It's like the players are dropping golf balls out of drones onto the green. Like, the course is played in the air. And here the course is played on the ground. Like you see it visually, you can understand the little nuances of the slopes and stuff like that from the ground. So it's such a unique animal that I feel like is a lot of times the data can fool you in looking at something like you mentioned in previous experience in Open Championships or on links golf courses, or even Pinehurst. I think is good because Pinehurst was so firm and so quick that it can sort of, give you some elements of playing the ball on the ground and running them into greens that you will see here. There was no landing it 10 feet short of a green in Silvis last week and hoping that it checks up to the pin. So just a very unique and different style of golf. The other big news today, John, of course, the U.S. somewhat surprisingly names Keegan Bradley Ryder Cup captain at Bethpage. You are right around the corner from there. I'm sure you're excited. I've already got a trip planned up. We got to meet up and play. My dad is coming up. We already have plans to check that out next year. What are your thoughts?
I like the Keegan move. Obviously, in today's age with media, everything gets leaked and everyone already spoils the surprise before it comes out. Nobody saw Keegan Bradley coming. Everyone was speculating like, oh, it'd be great if it was Tiger. If it's not, it's probably going to be Stuart Sink. And then they come out of left field with Keegan. I love it. I was saying I would love if Keegan just randomly won a major next year and then all of a sudden he just like qualifies himself onto the team anyway. Or if he could just play well enough to get back into the position he was last year, I'd love to see the discussion around golf Twitter on that if he's like a fringe player worthy of being on the team, because he's so young for a Ryder Cup captain. Like he's still playing every week and grinding. Usually
he's still very good.
Yeah, we've seen like Zach Johnson and Steve Stricker play play on tour while this is all going on, but they're kind of like ceremoniously getting sponsors exemptions here or there. Keegan's played a full schedule and like competing against these guys. But he's not buddy enough that it's like the boys club, which is the whole reason he didn't make the team last year. So I think there's actually enough separation, even though he's young and these guys age, that he can be a captain to them.
Right. The only person that I know that is like super close to Keegan is obviously Brendan Steele, who's not going to be an option. But it was more for me excitement that the boys club that I don't think worked, of Zach Johnson, of Stuart Sink, of Davis Love, of these guys, his tenure feels like they're out. Like, I don't think there's any chance Keegan picks Zach Johnson or one of these guys to be an assistant captain. Who are some names, I don't know if you've thought about this yet, that you think may be on his radar to join him on the staff? I have a couple that I think would be interesting, but interested to know what you think.
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably guys who hang around in your neck of the woods around the Grove where he's playing a lot, like a lot of those Florida-based guys. That's a good question because this could be a whole bunch of old guard. Maybe you put like Smiley Kaufman on the team.
Yeah, that not a bad call. I was thinking
on the the roster.
I think people will assume like Kuchar, but I don't love Kuchar. I know that he's played in 4, maybe 5 Ryder Cups. Maybe someone like Brandt Snedeker. I know Webb Simpson's name will probably come up a little bit. Hunter Mahan has played in 3 Ryder Cups. These are just some guys that I feel like are around the same age as Keegan Bradley, while not as accomplished of a player anymore. At one point in time, were better players than Keegan Bradley in their prime. So just it'll be interesting to see what he does with Tiger. Like if he wants to bring on Tiger as a vice captain, I think he has 0 chance of making that team, Tiger. Like there's just not going to happen. Or what if, I don't know, like what are we going to do with the LIV guys? Because listen, Phil Mickelson has got to be a Ryder Cup captain. Sergio Garcia has to be a Ryder Cup captain. Like this can only think about where we were 2 years ago with LIV players and where we are now. Like how far off do you think we are from accepting these players? At one point, Dustin Johnson is arguably our most accomplished Ryder Cup player ever. At some point, Brooks is going to want like these guys that need to be a part of this organization and deserve to be a part of the organization on both sides. If they don't have an unreal season in the majors like Brooks did last year, are going to ultimately always be on the outside looking in. And it feels like a competition that is missing a critical element if these huge names are not allowed to be a part of it for the long term. Yeah, I mean, back 9 bets. Ian Poulter has got to be a Ryder Cup captain. Like, these things absolutely have to happen, and it's just a matter of when. I mean, I was hopeful. I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I thought Phil at Bethpage would have been epic.
Yeah.
Whistling Straits is up next. I know Tiger wants a road game. Do you think Whistling Straits in 4 years will be at that point where we're ready to welcome him back into open arms? Is it
Phil?
reasonable? Yeah, Phil.
Yeah, I think so.
Phil v. Sergio would be epic, right?
So much could change in a year. You look back to where we were a year ago, and you would never think that we'd be talking about Bryson being a lock on the Ryder Cup the next year.
And the most popular. Who would have thought Bryson would be like the most popular player on the planet?
He's like the most likable. He's like the face of golf, really. I mean, when you think about a showman, a superstar athlete, like he's the guy. But yeah, I mean, I think Phil. I think 4 years. I mean, this whole live PGA beef will probably be squashed. Will be some sort of unified tour. I think it will blow over by then. I would love to see. People will embrace Phil when all is said and done. You give it a couple of years to breathe. So maybe Whistling Straits would make sense. I'd also like to see maybe like a David Duval and Lucas Glover combo on the roster. Just a couple guys who've won at Bethpage. Yep. Just bring those guys back for the American vibes.
Great.
I was looking up the Boston Common roster, but none of them are American. So
yes,
can't have anybody else from Boston Common join.
Who was the fourth guy they had? Oh, Hideki, right?
Hideki, yeah.
Yeah, that was the fourth guy, right? And then it's Rory and Shane.
Rory and Adam Scott.
Adam Scott, okay.
Was previously Hatton, and then he got shown the boot.
That's right, okay. All right, have you dug into Troon at all?
To be honest, I have not dove into it as much as I would like. So I don't have any. I mean, this is like this week is when you start to get the who are your early leans and stuff. I can't put myself out there that much because I haven't really researched it yet. But what about you? What are you leaning towards a guy right now?
Moderately. It's not that I'm leaning toward a guy. I was curious if you think, okay, so both tours, obviously it's going to be the last time next week that we see them come together and play together this year in the final major championship of the season. And they're both playing this week in preparation for next week's major. And they're playing like hugely contrasting golf courses, in my opinion. A very modern take on links. I would describe the Renaissance Club as like it's not 100-year-old course, and it doesn't look like it. Although there are some elements of traditional links golf that will be present in terms of the coastline and what you'll visually see on TV. And then you have Valderrama, which heavily tree lined, demands accuracy. And I think that the Renaissance Club doesn't care about accuracy at all. In fact, last year, it was the least penalizing course if you missed the fairway off the tee. Players only hit the fairway like 50% of the time, and there was virtually no penalty, and players just did not care about hitting the fairway. Valderrama is tough to get to some pin locations from the fairway. You not only have to be in it, you have to be on the correct side of it, and it is much more strategic. And I was just curious if you had a take on which you think will be a better preparation for a course like Troon.
Yeah, I think still being in the UK, it's not much of a difference of a trip, but you're at least getting used to the conditions, and you're testing out more of these like flighted shots and running it around these giant greens. So even though off the tee is generous and you're not going to be hitting those same tee shots, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Rory McIlroy, like he does this a lot the week before a major, if he just hits these low flighted tee shots, like the shots he's going to need next week, because he knows he cares about the majors and he just wants to tune up here. So you could do that here. Whereas Valderrama, like you said, it's just an entirely different setup. It is demanding off the tee. It is going to challenge you to be on your A game, but you're hitting shots out of thick rough and tiny greens and elevation. And none of that's really applicable. So, I mean, they don't play a ton in Europe on live. I think it's Valderrama, maybe one other in London. So just by proximity, I think it made sense to put that event here. So it's just shorter travel the following week. But yeah, I would think that the PGA guys are a little bit more prepared this week going into next.
All right, so let's talk about this course a little bit. You, as I tweeted out before the show went live, for many years now, released the absolute best, in my opinion, free course preview that is available out there on the internet at PGA Tout. Make sure you give them a follow. It is out usually on Sunday. It is the place where I typically will start my research for the week. How do you go about, like, what are your key elements to this course? And like how I mentioned earlier, how much of a factor the weather is. Like, how do you release a course preview that early without really knowing it? And would that change your article one way or the other if the weather went crazy, or if the weather was like, if you were expecting 3-mile-an-hour winds?
Yeah, I think the weather impacted weeks, I always have a lot more caveats. The preview is always going to be out on Sunday one way or another. So I usually will add a section up front that says, before you put any bets in, the weather will impact this week. And here's an example of how that has played out over the last 5 years. When there is weather, you know, we could get single digit winners. When there's not weather, you could get, 20 plus under par. That's like Kapalua is an example of that. Like, we've seen it blow at Kapalua, and it's single digits, and it's a tough grind, and it's all about scrambling. And then we've seen not a breath of wind, and it's soft, and everybody's just point and shooting who can get to 30 under par. So weather can dramatically influence any given tournament and emphasize different skill sets. Even here, I looked ahead at the weather forecast when I wrote this on Sunday, and it seemed like it was going to rain Thursday, but then kind of on and off, not so much after that. And now I'm pulling up the forecast again, and it's showers on Thursday, showers on Saturday, kind of overcast on Friday, and showers again on Sunday. So now it just seems like it's going to be super wet. But the way that the agronomy is over here, like, they'll drain it. It'll still play pretty firm, even though it's raining the entire time. But the wetter the course is, the more, especially Renaissance, like, the more bombing is just going to be advantageous, because you're not going to get the runouts that a links course is typically designed to level the playing field on. That was something that I really thought was going to be indicative of how Pinehurst played, where it was super firm. So I was in on these like more positional guys, and it was a pretty balanced leaderboard between bombers and plotters. But here, even though you've had your Tom Kims of the world, and David Lingmerth was in the mix last year, super like accurate, doesn't hit the ball anywhere, but a good iron player. Like, those guys just still pop at this course. But I still find myself leaning more towards bombers with the way the forecast is looking right now.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up right now that I have on Windfinder. So obviously Thursday and Friday, nothing higher that is projected than like a 15-mile-an-hour gust. Saturday, you see a little bit of rain there on Thursday as well. Saturday is nothing. Sunday is nothing. This can obviously change in a heartbeat. But if the conditions stay like this, you're putting a huge emphasis, it sounds like, on driving distance and players' ability off the tee to gain on the competition. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and slow greens. I think, you're not going to get greens like this, but the slow greens is such an identity here, especially, again, if it's going to rain more, it's going to be even slower. It's kind of blurs the lines with these fescue-based greens of like, where's the green end and the fringe begin. A lot of Texas wedges out here. Something like Victor Hovland would love a course like this, because you could just keep hitting the putter. You don't have to chip around so much. So things like that. You just have to be a little bit more creative. Look for those big greens, courses with big greens and slower greens and wetter conditions. That's kind of how I've, in lieu of all the strokes gain data that we don't really get so much of on the DP World Tour and the European side, just trying to figure out pieces of the comp courses that translate, even if it's not the entire course.
That's fair. 3 par 5s. You've got 5 par 3s. It's a par 70 layout, just over 7,300 yards. It's not short, but it's not crazy long either. There are a good bit, though, that I looked at of 175 plus yard approach shots. It looks like last year, nearly half the shots came from like 175 to 225, which is very different in terms of what we've seen the last couple of weeks, at least at Travelers, Rocket Mortgage, John Deere courses that turn into wedge 9-iron. This is going to require you to more use sort of the middle of your golf bag a little bit. And these holes, the way that they're aligned, depending on wind direction, can play a lot longer than that. They can play a lot shorter than that. The 5th is a drivable par 4. Last year, of course, Rory had to go driver 2-iron on the closing 18th hole, which was obviously a beautiful shot that sort of went viral there. But the fact that he went driver 2-iron on a 480-yard hole shows you the importance of how, like, to hit a 2-iron 200 yards is a club that he normally probably hits 270, 280 on a normal PGA Tour stop. So you're going to have a lot longer approach shots. I'm not really factoring in around the green game at all. Like you mentioned, it's so easy. The fescue is really clean to get the back of your club face on the ball. Bunker saves, sand saves, I have a little bit of importance on. And you mentioned the greens. I've having a hard time with sort of some putting stats because there just aren't courses where greens are rolling at like a 9.5, 10 on the PGA Tour. There's like none. And it's a Tom Doak design. So, of course, the greens hold a lot of the integrity of the design of the golf course, I would say, on any Doak design. They're big in size. You're going to have a lot of 30-plus foot putts. But the shorties are what get people. And I think maybe that's a lot in the days where the wind is really heavy because they're particularly vulnerable and a bit perched up, that you get a really slow 9, rolling at a 9 and a 4-foot putt. And that drives tour players crazy because they actually have to put a legitimate stroke on the ball. They can't just get it started on the right line. And a 35-mile-an-hour wind tends to, get them off balance a bit. And it's one of the toughest putting courses, I think the toughest last year inside of 5 feet. And that was predominantly all due to the final round conditions. Anything else you have to sort of add or intricacies that you're factoring into a stat model or things that you're looking at for this course in particular?
Yeah, I think like you said on 18, I'm pretty sure if it's not the hardest relative to par hole on the whole PGA Tour, it was top 2 or 3 last year. So just I love a finishing hole like that where it's like you got to really earn a 4. You got to hit some great shots, but you could get a birdie if you do what Rory did and hit a 2-iron to 2 feet. But realistically, like you got a nervy hole in front of you and you got to try to not make bogey. And we've had a lot of really good climactic finishes here. There was a 3-man playoff the year before it came over to the co-sanctioned event. It was a jam-packed leaderboard the year that Xander won. Before Rory, he overcame Kitayama and Tom Kim that year. Just very various styles of play that work here. So, again, for me, it's a lot less data intensive this week and more like, have I seen you play in these conditions before? Have you shown that you can play well on this course or other links courses? Is there anything I can pull out of a link style course that's been played in the elements that shows me that you can grind it out, in less than ideal conditions?
All right, let's pull up the odds board. Let's talk about some players. Here we go. Your favorite this week at the Scottish Open: Rory McIlroy, 7.5 to 1. Xander Schauffele right behind him at 8.5 to 1. Then you have Colin Morikawa, 14 to 1. Ludwig Åberg at 16 to 1. Then you get to Fleetwood, Hovland right around that 22 to 1 mark. John, the favorite this week, last time we saw him was a month ago, and he was peeling out of a parking lot in Pinehurst, North Carolina, with the most disappointed look on his face that I maybe have ever seen of a player sitting in the scoring room. What are your expectations for Rory? Like, do you expect that, like, uppercut that he took in the 8th round of his career to knock him out for a little bit, to stagger him? Or do you think he's the type of player that's going to be able to shake it off and get right back on the pedestal?
I mean, how funny is it that the last time we saw Rory, he's boofing 2 3-footers over the last 3 holes, and he comes to the course that's the hardest on tour to make inside of 5 feet. He's got to be. It's like, I know he chose to sit out until this week, and it made sense with the schedule, but he's got to be like, you got to be kidding me now. I gotta nurse these in too, or everybody's gonna be making fun of me for the rest of my career if I can't sink these 5-footers anymore. It's a clean slate, really. I mean, he's playing closer to home. He's back in the UK, a tournament that he has won before last year. Unfortunately, that brings even more media to him, which I know he would love to turtle in a shell and avoid. So he will have to kind of answer to everything that happened at the US Open. He's had enough time to think about it and put his diplomatic responses together and move on. It's easy to rag on Rory for giving away another major, but I'm in the camp that was a way more difficult putt on 18 than I think he's getting credit for. At the end of the day, he had an opportunity to get up and down from the fringe. Bryson had an opportunity to get up and down from a bunker from 50 yards out. Bryson did it and he didn't. So that's why he's not a major champion and Bryson is, and that probably stings a little bit. But if he wins a major next year, then he sleeps much easier after Pinehurst. So I think he had to reset a little bit. He has his comfort courses. So many times you've seen Rory win somewhere and just continue to win and win and win again there. So it makes sense that he sat out for a little bit, skipped that signature event after the US Open, and this is where he makes his return. All that said, he's gonna be a fade for me this week. There's so many question marks. How could you expect a normal 4 rounds from Rory McIlroy with everything going on in his life right now?
Yeah, I think you're right. And good point on the intense media obligations of being a defending champion. PGA Tour media has him as the first player listed into the press conference room. That can obviously change as players may get added tomorrow, but he's going to have to answer to it. And I think people just want honesty. Like, that's all we've almost always gotten from Rory. And I think that's what the expectation is, particularly after he didn't answer any questions, has been virtually unseen, released kind of, a PR statement from who's ever running his account. I doubt that he typed a single word of that, but we want to hear from him. We want to hear if that was one of the toughest moments of his career, because he certainly wore it on camera. Like you, I don't really have much interest in it. Morikawa, I'm like you and kind of factoring in distance over accuracy, so that kind of rules him out for me. I'm really kind of, John, I haven't pulled the trigger here, but I'm really between two players. I like Victor Hovland a lot. I like that he's been over there for a while. I know from his Instagram feed that he's been back home. He's been playing golf. He seems to be trending in a right direction. Back with Joe Mayo, he's back gaining strokes off the tee. If we're going to talk about a course that you rely heavily on being a prolific driver and putter, sounds pretty good for Victor Hovland. But I don't love the number, but I just feel like Xander Schauffele's going to win. He's at a 9-1 at a book that I'm staring at. 2022 champion here, albeit in really tough conditions that I don't think are replicated this week. But I think he's the best approach player in the field. He does so many things so well, John. I mean, he's gained 7 strokes on approach in 3 of his last 5 events. He is the best putter of all the elite players in the world right now. I mean, I'm talking Rory, I'm talking Scotty. Like, Xander is far and away a better putter than them. He's gained strokes putting in now 10 straight events. Every tournament he's played since the Arnold Palmer Invitational, he's gained with the putter. He's awesome both inside 10 feet and outside of 30 feet. 61% in PGA Tour sand saves this year. That is significantly ahead of the field average. 183 ball speed. He's 10 miles an hour faster than the average tour player. He's hitting more fairways than the average tour player. His worst start since the Genesis is a T25. Since then, he has 8 top 8s or better in 12 events. Like, he just checks almost every single box for me. And when you factor in that now I think Rory is still wearing around this monkey inside of a backpack on his shoulders, and I think Xander rid himself of that, I think that he should be the favorite and not Rory, and is significantly more likely to win this week than McIlroy. Tell me I'm wrong.
I was actually between those two guys you mentioned and started my card, and I did start my card with Xander at 9-1.
Okay, yes.
It just seems like Scotty is the only guy in the world who's outplayed Xander this week on a week-to-week basis, and like you said, he hasn't had any valleys this season. It's been his A game or his A- game every single week, and the PGA was his A+ game. If you want to combat the randomness of you don't really know what type of conditions you're going to get in links golf, you take the guy who's the most well-rounded and can withstand difficult conditions or a putting contest. He's a great long iron player, like you mentioned before. He's going to hit it long and in the fairway, but even if it's not in the fairway, he's still become one of the longest hitters. He's not going to put himself in trouble off the tee. Great iron player, great putter, great short game. Like, what more can you say about Xander? He's won here. A little disappointing last year, but it's okay.
Yeah,
we know what his ceiling is here, and that's why we bet outrights.
Yeah, certainly. And you made a great point how it's like he's seemingly doing it with a level of consistency that he's apparently bringing his A game every week. But at the same time, we know that to be impossible. I think if Scotty Scheffler wasn't having the historic year that he was, we would be much more um, eye-opened by the fact that Xander Schauffele has been incredibly consistent, that he won a major championship this year. And if he can check another one off the box and potentially, medal in the Olympic Games once again, he's having one of the best years that we've seen in recent history. And like, the reality is, it's impossible to bring your A game for 12 consecutive starts. What's really happening is he's showing up in some of those events, I would like to think, with his B or his C game, but he's good enough to overcome that. And that's what we see with Scotty when he has deficiencies. He's so good, he's overcoming and he's still able to top 10 a week when he brings his C game. And that's what Xander's doing. I mean, 12 consecutive starts inside the top 25 is extremely commendable. And I can't remember many players who have done that historically through 12 consecutive starts. And he's only playing elevated events. He's playing in big time fields. These are, tracking back over majors. I think that he's just set up really nicely this week. And the fact that you're on him is kind of talking me into siding with him as well. Right below that, so Tom Kim, Min Woo Lee, both in pretty good form. I would say Tom Kim is in incredible form. Had to get an exemption into this week, 28-1. He sort of was burnt out and missed the last cut, but before that was, striking it phenomenally off the tee. Min Woo has won here in the past. Hideki's 35-1. JT is 40-1. Fitzpatrick 40. Sung Jae Im 45. Aaron Rai, Bobby Mack, Brian Harmon. These are the players under 50-1. Any of them have your interest, John, this week?
I think this is ultimately what drove me when putting like my card together to Xander and not Victor. Is like, nothing's really calling out to me in this 40 range where, like, if I bet Xander, then it's Xander and a few long shots. And I feel just as good about a few guys at 80-1 as I do here. These are like good players who aren't in good form or have horrible links history. Like Sung Jae, I think 45 is a good number. And then you look at his history at the Open and the Scottish Open, it's egregious. He's like never made a cut. So I don't, I need a combination of both this week because it is such a unique beast. I do think you need to show that you can compete in these conditions. And that's what kind of brought me back to Victor a little bit. And like, Victor, I do like. He has seemed to have found something since partnering back up with Mayo, and he plays that Lofoten Links course a lot in Norway. Like I follow him on Instagram. He's always back at Lofoten Links when he's not playing in the U.S. And that's like bucket list course. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like every hole is like an island in the middle of the Nordic Sea. It is like the I don't know, the caricature of what you would describe what links golf is to like an AI bot. Like he is ready for this. So I do like Victor, and if this trend of getting the runner up every week continues, it's probably going to be Xander finishing runner up to Victor. So maybe I do a little dual forecast this week with those two.
Yeah, you know what? You said that and you were basically picking the words right out of my brain, because the reason that I'm sort of leaning to Xander is I don't really love anyone in the 30s, and I feel more inclined to go up to him at 9-1 because really the next guys that I like are available at 55-1. There's 3 of them, and I'm probably going to choose 2 out of these 3. I like Wyndham Clark this week a little bit. Hello Irons again for Wyndham Clark. Gained 3.5 at the Travelers, was finally a decent sight. His best performance on approach since the Players, where of course he finished T2. He is one of the, I would say, 3 or 4 longest players off the tee in the entire field. He always, it's a lock it in. Wyndham Clark is going to gain strokes off the tee, and he's a pretty good putter. I think what happened in the final round at the Travelers, I'm hoping spurred some motivation for him over a couple of weeks off to really like save your season, dude, because you have not been playing well. You somehow are still on Team USA and made the Olympic Cup. You're somehow still the number 4 player in the world, but you're resting on the laurels of what was done 6 months and beyond ago. Like, it's time to step up, and I hope that he's motivated after that one good round to like, hey, let me give this next month a huge charge here. And good course history, T25, T16 the last 2 years. Maybe a bit too early to jump back on the Wyndham Clark, but you're getting a top 5 player in the world at 50 to 1. It's not bad.
Yeah, we did not compare notes, but I started my card with Xander and Wyndham Clark.
Okay, let me see if you have if you're interested in either one of these next two guys. I kind of like Bobby Mack. Now, this one makes me a little queasy. So close last year, but I will say the conditions I think are going to be very similar. Of course, won the Canadian Open a few weeks ago. Second in strokes gained total when I looked at like these type of links courses. There isn't a whole lot of history that's driving from, mostly his round last year and what he's done in Open Championships, but a really good lag putter. Second in the field in putting at 30 plus feet and approach putting that I looked at. Another player that just really brings two assets to play, kind of like Wyndham Clark, of really good driver of the ball and a solid putter. Approach play is a bit of a concern. Familiarity matters, like you mentioned with someone like Victor Hovland, like understanding these conditions and understanding how to play golf here is different. And I think that matters. And I think that's a huge advantage for someone like Robert McIntyre, who probably gets a boost in the odds and normally would be 75 to 1 if it weren't for that. But that's how important that I feel it is this week. And the last one is down at 65 to 1. Another one that makes me a bit queasy, but a guy who's had good history here, a T12 and a top 16 in his 2 appearances, Max Homa. Now, Max Homa has not been able to find a fairway for months. This guy is absolutely on a struggle bus off the tee, but he's plenty long, so he's just not hitting any fairways. And like we mentioned earlier, I don't really think that matters at this course. Coming into the 2023 Scottish Open, he was also amidst this like sort of midsummer struggle bus. He missed 2 out of 3 cuts coming in. All of a sudden, he finishes T12. He plays really well. He parlays that into a top 10 at the Open Championship, and then 4 more top 10s in a row. Like, this was the event that sort of charged his late season run through the FedEx Cup playoffs, and he got it going at the Renaissance Club. Some weeks sort of to fix now off what was up with the driver. Maybe there's a new club in bag. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that he has to be like a bit at rest mentally, and I trust Max Homa's mental game, knowing that his biggest weakness and the biggest concern and red flag in his bag right now is not really penalized to the degree that it is at some other spots at this event. So it's Homa, Bobby Mack, Wyndham Clark. I'm probably going to take 2 of those 3, but those are like some of the mid-range guys that I just like just as much as those guys that are 35 and 40 to 1. So that's why I'm more inclined, I think, to go up and pay the steep price on Xander, because I like these guys 55, 60.
Yeah. Maybe Homa's on the hypnotherapy kick that Cam Davis was on that turned him around. Like, sometimes I just see one good result and I'm like, maybe you got a mental coach. Maybe there's something off the course that just happened that's a good vibe that you can carry from one week to another. So I'm hoping that's the case with Wyndham too. He had a good therapy session with his therapist, who seems to turn everybody into major champions. And with Robert McIntyre, I think Hamilton Golf and Country Club, where the RBC Canadian Open just was, it's actually a really good comp just from like a leaderboard overlap standpoint. You had him win and finish runner up here. Victor Perez has had a lot of good results here. Tom Kim was in the mix 2 years ago, and Rory was top 5 at that event as well. So I think similar yardage and, similar types of shots you have to hit, obviously different conditions, but that would sway me in the direction of Bob Mack too, just looking at recent results on comp courses.
As we start to get into the long shots at this event, 156-man field, you get a lot of sort of unique names that play primarily on the DP World Tour. I know that you, like myself, a little bit later in the week will release a long shot specific piece of content, so I don't expect you to spill them all. But do you have one player maybe you can give me over 100 to 1 that you've kind of got your eye on this week for the Scottish Open?
Yeah, I cut my card off at Dietrich. I just bet 3 guys. Xander, Clark,
Mhm.
and Dietrich. He's at 80.
Yeah.
But yeah, this week is a good week to get cute with like some of the European guys that you don't have a chance to bet on the DP World Tour if you're just betting PGA Tour alone like me. So you and Ferguson, that's probably not how it's pronounced, but he just won last week. He's a Scottish guy, finished
Mhm.
T12 here last year. He's somebody I'll probably write a little bit more about this week. Not that I watched any of the DP World Tour last week, but I know he's coming in off a win coming home. And was one of few DP World Tour players to finish in that top 15 last year. So he's one of the long shots I have my eye on. I think Van Rooyen you can get at 100 to 1. I think I like him a lot as well. Just seems to be trending with the ball striking again, and somebody who, when I think of slow greens like those resort past Palm greens, those tend to be a little bit slower and wind exposed. That's where he's picking up his
Good point.
wins. So I like Van Rooyen here as well.
Yeah, Tom McKibben's getting some love. Don't know much about him. There's Ferguson at 125. I think Jordan Smith is someone that I may end up putting on the card 125 to 1. I think he finished second last week to Ferguson as well and is a super long hitter over there on the DP World Tour. I'll give you one now, and I actually got 150 to 1 earlier today. It looks like there's 125s out there. You can probably shop the 150. But Matthew Wallace. So I've been putting him on the card, and he's had a couple of close calls, and I really just don't want to abandon ship, especially here on what I think is a pretty good course fit. And the reason why I think it's a good course fit is when you look at 175 to 225 yards, which is that key approach range that I mentioned. I have him second in the entire field over the last 30 rounds from that range and strokes gained approach. He's really what I think evolved like in terms of picking and choosing his season and his schedule very nicely. Had a ton of success on the DP World Tour, came over to the PGA Tour, and I think just tried like many guys to just play every week you possibly can. And that didn't work for him, both mentally or physically manifesting itself into results. I think that he's kind of found his sweet spot now. Hitting his irons, great. Like I mentioned, you mentioned a little bit of a comp to Canada, which also is a positive note for Matthew Wallace. Gained 5.5 on approach there at the Canadian Open. One of the best in the PGA Tour in terms of sand saves. He's like 66% on the season in terms of sand saves. That is much better than PGA Tour average. And it's a guy whose weakness, once again, is somewhat de-emphasized at this course, and that he does not hit fairways. His driving accuracy is very poor. I think it's just a reasonable enough to hope and pray for a decent putter. I think he makes a nice little top 20 bet here, and a guy who's been popping up on leaderboards and playing pretty well at a big price of 150 to 1. So that's one that I'll let out now for a little bit of Matt Wallace love.
Yeah, I didn't think of Corrales as a comp for this, but the more you started describing how he fits here, obviously his last win was at Corrales, and you talk about a course that's coastal, wind exposed,
Yeah.
not too difficult, but can get difficult if it's windy or
Slow
otherwise becomes
greens.
a free, and very slow greens where the wind is really affecting the short putts, and very forgiving off the tee. I think Corrales is actually a very good comp, even though it's like 7,600 yards. It doesn't play that way, and that's a course that a lot of these plotters have had a lot of success at, which we see at this course too. So I don't know. You might have convinced me to throw a little bonus bet on Matt Wallace. I bet him a couple weeks ago. Where did I bet? I bet him at the Rocket Mortgage when he missed a cut. So that means he's probably due to bounce back this week.
Jack mentioned this guy. I don't know anything about this guy, Jack. Kita Nakajima. Probably
Oh
said
yeah,
that wrong. Unbelievable amateur talent turning into his pro career. Got any notes on Nakajima? What's Nakajima do well, John?
he's a plotter. He's very accurate. A Japanese prodigy, was supposed to be the next Matsuyama. He had this trend going where every time he played in an event that Hideki won that event. So he like only played in the Zozo and the Sony as his first two professional events, and Hideki won both of them. But very accurate, good, like accurate ball striker, can do well on a plotter's course, and just won on the DP World Tour 2 weeks ago, I believe, or 3 weeks ago. So really talented. He won the Indian Open in March, so not that recently, but he did win on the DP World Tour. He's put together a bunch of top 25s recently. So I would prefer somebody with a little more distance, because it seems to be that the short guys are the outliers at Renaissance Club, but really promising career. Could be a Tom Kim type the more reps he gets. And the way that the DP World Tour is going now, it's like the top 10 players from that tour just become PGA Tour players now. It just feeds into the PGA Tour. So he's already won this year. He's got a good chance to become a PGA Tour player next year, and then we'll see a lot more of him.
Very good stuff, John. See, Jack, that is why I like to bring on actual guests with knowledge that are experts. Appreciate that. The Everything You Need to Know article about the Renaissance Club is already out this week, John. What else do you have planned? Are you going to start being more active on Twitter? Because we miss you, man. We're happy that you're safely moved in. You and the wife have settled down into a new spot, but we need you back. We need you back tweeting out like funny stuff every now and then.
Yeah, I need to.
We need the wit.
I got to compartmentalize my life a little bit. I got the new house, a new wife, my job. I don't work for HBO anymore. I'm doing Uber now, so a lot of different like subtle life changes where I needed to just get everything in order and then come back to this. But like I said, I think I'm back now. I needed to get on preferred lines and get back into the groove. So I appreciate you having me. And yeah, a little bonus ISCO content later this week, formerly the Barbasol Championship. I haven't really dove into that yet. But you know, I'll have my long shots post up tomorrow, and then I'll have two separate articles, one for all the final bets at the Genesis, and then a bonus mini preview and betting card for ISCO, which is a very interesting.
ISCO,
we talk about the shortening gap between junior and pro golf. It's all college kids who are favorites in that one. So that's actually going to be an interesting event. Yeah,
it'll be cool, man. I appreciate you making time for me tonight. As always, you are one of my favorite people to talk to and have conversations with golf about. Continue to keep up the great work. At PGA Tout is the place to find him on Twitter. Good luck this week. I can only hope that bringing someone on the show who is equally struggling to hit an outright winner can somehow reverse the course of the future and bring us a winner, maybe on Xander. You know what? Let's do Wyndham Clark this week. How about that? That's better.
Lock it in. We're both in agreement. Or maybe it's Matt Wallace.
Get me back to even on the air.
A little overexposed on Matt Wallace. You convinced me.
All right, man. Have a good night. I appreciate you.
Thanks, man.
See you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out the show. As always, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to tell a friend, make sure to post it on Instagram, make sure to TikTok this show, clip it for me. Do anything you can to help spread the news that Preferred Lines is one of the coolest and hopefully fun golf shows that you listen to each and every week. The Open Championship preview show will be out nice and early. I'm recording with a special guest. I'm bringing on Ben Cooley next week. So I think Ben and I are going to record the Open preview show on Saturday. I will try to get that up on Sunday, get it out there an extra day early so that you guys are ready to capitalize on any and all odds movement that happens Monday morning. Keep an eye on some players this week and keep an eye on those future markets. I don't think the weather appears to be too bad at Troon next week. So I wouldn't, if you see signs from a player like Max Homa or a player like Hideki or someone like that who you think could play well again next week, it may be, advantageous to go ahead and take them now. You guys are the absolute best for checking out this show. Leave me a comment in the episode here and let me know who you think is going to win the Genesis Scottish Open. Thank you for being patient with me. I'm re-energized. It was a week in the woods that was much needed. The golf season and work and life and dadding and husbanding can be a grind, especially in the fast-paced environment where we are always glued to technology and outside influences around us in the world. It was nice to unplug and to leave my phone alone and to just be in nature with my 2 kids and my wife for like 7 days. It's the most enjoyable week that I have every single year. I'm still excited to be back in the saddle this week, ready to finish strong. Thank you for checking out Preferred Lines this week. You guys are the best. I'll check you next week for the Open Championship. Let me pull up the outro. I'm out of here. Peace, gang.